Before there was Ellen Ripley, before there was Wonder Woman, there was the original action heroine, Atalanta. Now available in ebook, paperback, and audio form. Links in the description. Iuchiban, the Blood Speaker, the most infamous Mahotsukai in the history of L5R. I've said before that if it weren't for literal god-tier enemies like the Lying Darkness or Fu Leng, this guy would be the ultimate villain of the setting, and I stand by that. He was a figure of menace whose very name was enough to set the hearts of even the most bold samurai quaking with fear. Yet, as far as most citizens of the Empire were aware, his origins were a complete mystery. There were all sorts of conflicting narratives about where he came from. Some said he was a fallen master of the void, others a gardener from the capital of Otosan Uchi. Still others insist that he was a member of the Lost Unicorn clan, returned from beyond the mountains to the north. But these were all lies, invented and promulgated after the fact, all to the purpose of covering up a very inconvenient truth. To truly understand who Iuchiban was and how he came to be, we must first address his father, the Emperor of Rokugan. In 487, Empress Hantei Retsuhime died without an heir. Her marriage had been completely childless, and so for the first time in the Emerald Empire's history, there was no clear successor. The unbroken line of parent to child that had been in place since Hantei I was no more. Rokugan was genuinely at risk of a succession crisis. Luckily, there was a convenient solution to hand. Ever since the reign of the second emperor, Hantei Genji, when his younger brother had willingly renounced all claim to the throne, there had been the ritual of abdication. Technically a tradition, but effectively a law, where all younger siblings of a reigning emperor or empress renounced all claim to the throne and the Hantei line and were absorbed into the Otomo family. And so, the Otomo family was quite literally lousy with the descendants of second sons and daughters of the Hantei line. So, no problem, they just had to backtrack down the genealogical tree, find Retsuhime's closest relative, and put him or her on the throne. And apparently none of Retsuhime's three sisters that are mentioned had any children of their own, because the person they ultimately found was Retsuhime's second cousin. The lore specifically mentions him as the son of the cousin of Hantei Yugozo Hime and his doji wife. Yugozo Hime was Retsuhime's mother, who in turn was the daughter of Hantei Kusada, the guy that was reduced to being a puppet during the Gozoku. Kusada is mentioned as having two siblings, his brother Muhaki, who succeeded Yugozo Hime as regent and is officially counted as an emperor even though he really shouldn't be, and no, I will never let this go, and an unnamed sister. And since Muhaki is explicitly mentioned as childless, that pretty much rules him out as the progenitor of Yugozo Hime's cousin's son. Based on these bits of lore and a little bit of conjecture, we can safely assume, therefore, that Kusada's sister had a son who then married a doji and then produced the man who became the next emperor of Rokugan. His given name was forgotten to history because he willingly gave up his Genpuku name and referred to himself as Hantei X. This marked the beginning of the tradition of emperors and empresses being referred to specifically by the family name and a number instead of by their given names. Hantei X is indeed remembered as the Hantei who gave up his name for the empire. As reigns go, that of Hantei X was not particularly exceptional. He did some good things like establishing the first system of education in Rokugan, but he also did some questionable things, like giving preferential treatment to monks and the Brotherhood of Shinsei because of his disdain for Shugenja. The one event of any real note during his reign was the result of an increasingly hostile rivalry between the Otomo family of the imperial household and the Scorpion clan. The problem all started because the Otomo family and the Scorpion clan began to argue over who should be the real sneaky bastards of the Emerald Empire. The Otomo were especially jealous of the Scorpion clan's spy network, which employed ninjas as a way of gathering intelligence. So they started a whispering campaign in the imperial court that eventually persuaded Hantei X to order the abolition of the Scorpion clan's spy network. The clan champion, Bayushi Hachioki, loyally carried out his emperor's command, even to the point of executing many ninja, including his own brother, Bayushi Aramoro, not to be confused with a later Bayushi Aramoro who exists in the 12th century. Or so it seemed. Well, the executions were entirely real, but Hachioki still believed that his clan's purpose was to keep an eye out for traitors within the empire. And so, in fact, the executions were just a way to save face and look convincing to the emperor. He had no intention of actually disbanding the spy network. But of course, since the emperor was openly hostile to it, Hachioki knew that he would need to be subtle, find ways of concealing the network's existence as it continued to do its job. This was a difficult question, and Hachioki took consultation with the daimyos of the other three clans of the Scorpion, the Shosuro, Soshi, and Yogo families. But at last, he came to a solution. What he would do is create a myth, the myth of a ninja conspiracy that acted independent of the Scorpion clan and was beyond their control. And that in fact, the Scorpion, now in compliance with the Emperor's decrees, were doing everything in their power to stamp out these wicked, dishonorable spies. This of course meant from now on that Scorpion agents would essentially serve as the clan's fall guys, taking the blame for any kind of skullduggery that they got exposed in. But this was hardly new for the Scorpion. Theirs was a clan that had always been willing to sacrifice honor in the name of the greater good. Among those willing to sacrifice all for the clan and its raison d'etre was the great samurai and ninja Shosuro Nodage. Prior to this point, Scorpion spies had simply worn whatever clothing was appropriate to the surroundings. It was Nodage and his subordinates who created the stereotype of the ninja in Rokugan, the uniform of all black and masks, taking part in missions that were stealthy but not so covert that they could go completely unnoticed, again drawing attention away from the real intelligence work of his clan. Thus, Nodage played the pivotal role in using the ninja as a smokescreen of sorts to conceal his clan's activities. His methods and techniques would eventually provide the foundation for the Shosuro Infiltrator School, as well as its infamous test, the Gauntlet. And that's pretty much it as far as the reign of Hantei X is concerned. Now we turn to his sons, Hohiro and especially Jama. Hohiro's birth date is unknown, but Jama is speculated to have been born around 480, and that he was initially born with white hair, which was taken as an omen that he was destined to wield great magical power. Jama grew to be both charismatic and ambitious, but that meant little because he was the spare, not the heir. As such, Hohiro had many followers and sycophants in the court, all hoping to buddy up to the future emperor, while Jama had very few friends. The first was his fiancée, Doji Tsugiko, a clever daughter of the crane, although not very pretty apparently. The second was a brilliantly talented and ambitious shugenja and artisan named Asahina Yajinden. But these came later. The very first friend that Jama ever made was Iga Suru, the son of the daimyo of the Iga family, a phoenix vassal family of the Shiba. One day, accompanied only by a single yojimbo, Jama happened to be passing through the village that the Iga family controlled, and went to pay his respects to the Iga daimyo. The daimyo greeted the prince, accompanied by his wife and only son, Iga Suru. In perhaps one of the most mysterious moments in Rokugani history, during the initial greetings, Iga Suru, in its seeming burst of outrage, tackled Jama to the ground. Before either the bodyguard or the boy's parents could react, bandits suddenly emerged and killed the three adults. Their purpose was to kidnap Prince Jama. However, all they saw were two mud-coated boys wrestling on the ground. They demanded of the two boys where the Hantei prince was. Half paralyzed with fear, Suru could only stammer out that he didn't know, and Jama was so caked in mud that he was unrecognizable. And so the bandits went away. Plot convenience demanding that they would not be very smart bandits. As a reward for saving his life, Jama gave his name to Iga Suru. Henceforward he would be known as Jama Suru, and he would be kept close to the prince ever after. An odd basis for a friendship, but there you are. However, young Jama's defining characteristic was his ambition. Above all else, he wanted to be emperor, and that could never be as long as his elder brother stood in his way. At some undetermined point, though, near the end of the 5th century, there was a moment where it seemed like the throne was in his grasp. Hohiro fell gravely ill. The best doctors and shugenja in the empire labored over the crown prince's bedside, but it seemed that all their efforts would be for naught, and Hohiro's chances of survival were despaired of. Of course, the nature of imperial court politics being what they are, many who had been close to the crown prince now began to circle about Jama. Suddenly, the second son of Hantei X found himself very popular indeed with many, including one of his elder brother's closest friends, Matsu Arashige of the Lion Clan. But then, at the 11th hour, a cure was found, and Hohiro recovered. And just like that, all the new friends and allies that Jama had been courting evaporated. All flocked back to circle about Hohiro, the future emperor of Rokugan, Matsu Arashige among them. That sense of coming so close, only to have it all snatched away from him, would burn in Jama's memory for pretty much the rest of his life. But it seemed that any chance he had at the throne was gone, and upon achieving manhood at the age of 16, he underwent his Genpuku ceremony. And, in keeping with ironclad tradition since the days of Emperor Genji, Jama renounced all claim to the throne, swore allegiance to his brother as the future emperor, and assumed the name Otomo Jama. As of now, he was no longer officially of the Hantei line, and thus disqualified in any way from the throne. As it happened, that same day after the Genpuku ceremony, Otomo Jama encountered Matsu Arashige in the halls of the imperial palace, alone. Perhaps the sight of the lion samurai reminded Jama how all those fickle and fair-weather courtiers had gone over to him when his brother was ill, only to abandon him when he recovered. Yet another reminder of just how the chrysanthemum throne had nearly been his, only to be snatched away. Some say that Arashige had mocked and insulted Jama when his brother had recovered his health, and the memory of those insults, in addition to the stinging disappointment of his renunciation of claim to the throne, proved the final straw. Either way, Otomo Jama stabbed Matsu Arashige to death. The only witnesses were his 3 loyal friends, Asahina Yajinden, Jama Suru, and Doji Tsugiko. Jama made excuses about why he'd done it, and Tsugiko, who loved him, was willing to swallow those excuses. It's unknown just how willing to believe him Suru and Yajinden were, but the two certainly were more than willing to help Jama conceal Arashige's body. So no one ever knew what happened to him. As it turned out, though, despite undergoing the ritual of abdication, Otomo Jama had no intention of giving up his desire to claim the chrysanthemum throne. He just decided that he would need more unconventional and esoteric ways of obtaining it. And so, along with Yajinden, who possessed a great thirst for knowledge, the former prince retreated to the imperial libraries and began scouring the many, many scrolls therein for some secret that could help him obtain his desires. And it was there that he did indeed find what he was looking for. Dark and terrible secrets that he believed would put him on the path to becoming Emperor of Rokugan.